Aria Bellman's entire world exploded the moment her eyes caught the unmistakable crimson smear of lipstick on her husband Lucas's collar, illuminated cruelly under the chandelier in their grand foyer. Pregnant, vulnerable, and trembling, she felt her pulse roar violently in her ears, drowning out the serene hum of the mansion she once called home. Just hours ago, she had envisioned cuddling beside Lucas, whispering names for their unborn child, a fantasy now ruthlessly shattered. Instead, she stood frozen, heart pounding, as Lucas strode past her without even a glance, his cold silence like a dagger twisting deep into her chest. This wasn't the first sign, but it felt horrifyingly definitive, erasing any desperate hope she'd clung to. Her mind spiraled back to those blissful early days of their relationship, when Lucas, ambitious but tender, had vowed they'd build a future filled with purpose, compassion, and unwavering fidelity. She remembered vividly how he'd sweep into her office bearing thoughtful surprises, handwritten notes tucked inside floral bouquets, charming gestures reminding her why she trusted him completely. But as his business empire expanded, media fawningly dubbing him the next big thing in luxury real estate and technology, his warmth evaporated, replaced by an unsettling distance. Now, standing amid the echoing silence of the opulent home they had built, Arya understood the painful truth she'd been trying to deny. Lucas's heart had drifted towards someone else. Whispers about the alluring socialite Celeste Moretti, whose presence haunted exclusive clubs and private lounges, filled her thoughts, tormenting her with jealousy and suspicion. Tonight's discovery, the glaring lipstick stain, seemed to confirm her darkest fears. She pressed a protective hand against the gentle swell of her belly, silently apologizing to the child whose father was slipping further away each passing day. Arya felt tears sting her eyes, bitter reminders of her vulnerability, but she refused to succumb fully to despair. Not yet. First, she needed answers, painful though they might be. Her life, her baby's future, deserved clarity, no matter how devastating. She had grown up with values of truth and honesty, instilled by her mother, Beatrice, and she couldn't betray those principles now. Tomorrow she'd face Lucas, confront the lies, and fight for the dignity that remained. Tonight, however, she allowed herself one moment of mourning, mourning the husband she'd lost, the marriage she once cherished, and the innocent dream of a love that now lay in ruins. Maxwell Cavendish entered with the stealth of a thief, slipping off his designer shoes in the foyer so as not to wake anyone. Yet Adelaide was already there, standing just beyond the grand piano's polished silhouette. A single glance told her everything she needed to know. His unkempt hair, the faint scent of floral perfume that wasn't hers, and the hint of lipstick smudged on the collar of his impeccably tailored suit. She felt a fresh wave of nausea and heartbreak, though she willed herself not to crumble. "Adelaide," he began, surprise briefly contorting his handsome features. There was a forced calm in his voice, the kind he used when closing a business deal. "You're still awake?" "I had reason to be," she replied, her tone clipped. She lifted the papers, letting the overhead light glint off the legal lettering. "These arrived today, Maxwell. I've signed them. All that's left is to file." His eyes widened, and a flicker of genuine distress crossed his face. Or perhaps, she thought cynically, it was alarm at the prospect of losing half his net worth. "Divorce?" he whispered, stepping closer. "Why are you doing this now?" Adelaide let out a bitter laugh. "Why now?" She indicated the smudged lipstick and lifted a brow. "Because everything I suspected just became real. Because I'm carrying your baby while you're out indulging yourself. Because I refuse to watch you toss aside our marriage in favor of cheap thrills." For a moment, Maxwell looked as if he might weave another story, blame business pressures, or claim it was a drunken mistake. Then he released a ragged sigh, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I never wanted this to happen, Adelaide. I messed up badly, but please, let's not rush into anything." Adelaide stood firm, her pulse pounding in her ears. She thought of the baby inside her, fragile yet full of potential. "If you truly cared, you wouldn't have done this." Her eyes grew wet, but she blinked away the tears. "I'm done, Maxwell. My decision is final." At that, the dynamic between them changed. She could sense the shift, the realization dawning on him that her words weren't idle threats. If you feel for Adelaide right now, comment, "I stand with Adelaide," or leave a supportive note. Your thoughts might give her strength. 2 days later, Adelaide found herself walking through the plush, high-ceilinged halls of the Ralston and Morgan law firm. The red-carpeted corridors and oil paintings exuded a sense of quiet power. Her attorney, Penelope Ralston, was known throughout Manhattan's elite circles as a formidable negotiator, a woman who had single-handedly taken down celebrity spouses in headline-grabbing divorce cases. Adelaide couldn't help but feel a mix of trepidation and determination as she approached Penelope's corner office. She stepped in and was greeted by a sharp-eyed woman with neatly pinned hair and a steely smile. Penelope stood to offer a handshake and gestured for Adelaide to sit. The desk was immaculate, save for a thick file labeled Cavendish versus Cavendish. Adelaide's heart thumped uncomfortably at the sight, but she reminded herself this was a step toward reclaiming her life. "Adelaide," Penelope said, leaning forward in her high-backed chair, "I've reviewed the preliminary documents and text messages you shared. We have more than enough grounds for a strong case: irreconcilable differences, infidelity, even emotional distress." Adelaide nodded, swallowing the knot in her throat. "I'm not trying to bleed Maxwell dry," she confessed, her voice wavering. "I just want stability for my child. I refuse to let him walk all over me anymore." A small smile tugged at Penelope's lips. "It's perfectly reasonable. In fact, that willingness to be fair often speaks volumes in court. We'll seek alimony, child support, and an arrangement that ensures you don't bear the entire burden alone. Given your pregnancy, we'll also push for exclusive occupancy of the penthouse if that's what you want, unless you prefer a simpler place." Adelaide paused, images of the gleaming penthouse flooding her mind. The opulent furniture, the panoramic view of Central Park, and now the haunting memories of shattered trust. "I'm not sure I can stay there," she admitted, "but I also don't want Maxwell leveraging that property in an attempt to humiliate me." Penelope's eyes flickered with fierce intelligence. "Then we'll ensure he can't. Trust me, Adelaide. You have rights, and I intend to uphold them. Prepare yourself, though. Maxwell might fight back." Adelaide exhaled shakily. Despite the tension, she felt a glimmer of hope. If you believe in Adelaide's strength, comment, "Stay strong, Adelaide," or share your words of encouragement below. It's always uplifting to see your support. The very next morning, Adelaide was awakened by the familiar aroma of fresh coffee wafting through Estella Lou's cozy apartment. Estella had been Adelaide's closest friend since college, and when the scandal broke, Estella immediately insisted Adelaide stay with her, at least until the dust settled. Unlike the penthouse, Estella's place was a humble one-bedroom near Chinatown, its walls filled with personal photographs and crocheted blankets handed down by relatives. But in that modest environment, Adelaide felt a greater sense of home than she had in the towering grandeur of the Cavendish residence. She slipped from the spare mattress in the living area, carefully navigating around boxes of Estella's old textbooks, then found her friend in the kitchen. The steaming mug of coffee Estella handed her was a kindness Adelaide savored. "Long night?" Estella asked softly, noting the exhaustion under Adelaide's eyes. Adelaide nodded. "I kept dreaming about the baby. Strange visions of me alone in a hospital, about to give birth, and Maxwell nowhere in sight." She paused, stirring her coffee with a trembling hand. "But maybe that's how it'll end up. Maybe I should prepare for that." Estella's expression softened. "Maxwell can't just vanish, even if things are ugly. He's legally obligated to be part of this child's life, or at least support you. But it's also your decision if you let him in emotionally." Adelaide appreciated her friend's supportive logic. After all the illusions she'd clung to, she needed this straightforward approach. "I just don't know how to navigate it," she admitted. "What if he tries to sweet-talk me again? What if I cave?" Estella pressed a comforting hand over Adelaide's. "You won't, because you know the difference between an empty promise and a sincere apology now. Besides, you have Penelope Ralston on your side. She'll handle the legal angle. You focus on taking care of yourself and the baby." The gentle warmth of Estella's reassurance soothed Adelaide's frazzled nerves. For the first time in weeks, she felt capable of moving forward with clearer eyes and a steadier heart. As the sun inched higher outside the window, she resolved that today would mark a fresh start. Could you imagine yourself in Adelaide's position? Share your thoughts in the comments or drop a heart if you're rooting for her. It helps us connect with you on this emotional journey. Across town, Maxwell Cavendish stared at the panoramic view from his office window, jaw clenched and mind racing. He had built his empire from a small inheritance, an unstoppable ambition, carefully crafting the persona of a genius entrepreneur with an eye for high-return properties. To the outside world, his life was perfection, a marriage to the radiant Adelaide, membership at exclusive clubs, and wealth beyond measure. But now every phone call or email threatened to yank that facade apart. His personal attorney, Frederick Chambers, stepped inside with a tense smile. "We have the official summons," Frederick said, handing Maxwell a packet of paperwork. The letterhead from Ralston and Morgan glared at him like an accusation. "They're moving forward with a strong case citing your infidelity and emotional harm." Maxwell set his jaw tighter, flipping through the pages. "I don't deny I messed up," he replied, the corners of his eyes twitching. "But I'm not about to fold my entire life over one mistake." Frederick nodded slowly. Infidelity often sways a judge in matters of alimony, but it's not always decisive. More critical is whether Adelaide can prove you've neglected her emotionally and financially. And with a baby on the way, he left the words hanging. Rubbing the back of his neck, Maxwell felt genuine regret coiling in his gut. A mix of guilt, embarrassment, and an awareness that he was hurting someone who had only ever supported him. "I want to make this right," he said, voice low, "but I don't think Adelaide believes me anymore." Frederick took a seat, smoothing out the lapels of his suit. "You have two priorities, Maxwell. Protect your assets from an unfair settlement and show the court you're a dedicated father-to-be. If Adelaide sees you truly stepping up, maybe you can salvage not just your finances, but also the relationship." Maxwell glanced again at the city beyond the floor-to-ceiling glass. He recalled the first time he and Adelaide had admired such a view together. She had called it breathtaking. Now, as the afternoon sun glinted off distant skyscrapers, he tasted only the bitterness of loss. Wondering what Maxwell's next move might be? Type Team Adelaide or Team Maxwell in the comments to let us know whose side you're on, or share any advice you give these two. By late afternoon, Adelaide found herself heading to an appointment with her obstetrician, Dr. Faraday, someone she trusted deeply. The thought of Maxwell attempting to attend the prenatal checkup made her chest tighten. He had promised to be an active father, but given the turmoil, she wasn't sure she could handle the tension of him showing up unexpectedly. As she settled into the waiting room, the normal chatter of expectant parents surrounded her, people exchanging nursery decorating tips, discussing baby names, and sharing excited glances. Adelaide, however, felt her isolation growing. She had imagined these appointments as joyous events she would share with her husband, not something she would navigate in the midst of betrayal and looming divorce. The nurse called her name, leading her into a pastel-colored examination room with posters of healthy pregnancy tips on the walls. Dr. Faraday entered shortly after, a reassuring smile on his face. "Adelaide, how are we feeling today?" he asked, glancing at her chart. She mustered a small smile. "Better than I expected, though I've been under stress. Personal stuff." She figured there was no point in hiding it. The tabloids had already begun whispering about the Cavendish split. The doctor nodded sympathetically. "Stress can affect both you and the baby, so let's keep an eye on it. If you need any referrals for counseling or just extra support, I'm here." It was such a simple gesture, yet Adelaide felt an unexpected surge of gratitude. The only question that truly mattered right now was the baby's well-being, and Dr. Faraday was one of the few people treating her like a patient, not a gossip headline. He guided her through a routine exam, checking her vitals and discussing her diet and sleep schedule. When the soft, rhythmic pulse of her baby's heartbeat filled the room, Adelaide's eyes welled with tears. This was the reminder of why she fought so hard to break free. She refused to let her child be raised in a constant cloud of deception. For now, she would stand firm, no matter the cost. Does the sound of a baby's heartbeat tug at your heartstrings too? Share a heartfelt emoji or comment a favorite lullaby if you recall special moments like this. Let's keep the conversation soothing and supportive. Outside the clinic, Adelaide's phone buzzed insistently. The screen revealed Maxwell's name. Part of her wanted to silence it forever, but another part, the part tethered to the father of her unborn child, hesitated. She picked up on the fifth ring, bracing herself. "Adelaide," his voice came through, low and seemingly humbled. I heard about your appointment. I wanted to be there, but I didn't want to show up and cause more tension. She pressed her lips together, weighing her response. I appreciate the restraint. The appointment went well. Can I see you? Talk in person just for a few minutes? He asked. I promise I'm not trying to worm my way back home. I just need to speak to you as the mother of my child. Adelaide drew a slow breath, feeling the burn of memory. The nights he never came home, the humiliating headlines splashed on tabloids about his affair. And yet she recognized that navigating parenthood would require some level of communication. All right, she said at last, but somewhere neutral. There's a small cafe near Estella's place. The Corner Brew. They agreed to meet in an hour. Adelaide ended the call, her heart rattling with unease. Had she made a mistake by letting him in? Or was this a necessary step to define boundaries and safeguard the baby's future? At the Corner Brew, she settled into a booth overlooking the sidewalk. The place was cozy, whitewashed walls, potted succulents, and the smell of fresh espresso in the air. Maxwell arrived shortly after, wearing a fitted charcoal suit that only highlighted the dark circles under his eyes. He looked worn, as if regret had chipped away at his usual confidence. Thank you for meeting me, he said, sliding into the seat opposite her. She offered a curt nod, folding her hands on the table to stop them from trembling. For a moment, neither spoke. The tension between them was palpable. Finally, Maxwell cleared his throat. I'll get straight to the point. I want to be part of our child's life. I'll follow whatever conditions you set, but please don't shut me out. How would you respond to Maxwell? Let us know in the comments if you'd give him a second chance or if you'd keep your distance. Your perspective might mirror Adelaide's dilemma. Taking a shaky sip of her herbal tea, Adelaide studied him closely. Once, that compelling gaze of his was all she needed to feel safe. Now it was a stark reminder of how attraction could blind her to deeper flaws. She saw the faint lines of exhaustion at the corners of his eyes, a slight tremor in his hands when he reached for his coffee. I'm not shutting you out, Maxwell, she began, voice level. You're the child's father, but trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight, and I won't pretend everything is fine just so you can soothe your conscience. He swallowed, setting his cup down. I know. I'm not expecting instant forgiveness. I've enrolled in therapy sessions, individual for me, and couples therapy if you'd ever be open to it. Adelaide raised an eyebrow, skeptical. It took losing me to realize you needed therapy? A flicker of pain crossed his features. I've always been ambitious, obsessive even, and I let that obsession spiral into ego and carelessness. I was surrounded by people telling me I was untouchable. I fell for the hype and he stopped, unable or unwilling to articulate the rest. In that silence, Adelaide remembered the starry-eyed nights they once shared, when Maxwell's lofty dreams excited her, before the hush-hush phone calls and the rumors of him flirting shamelessly at high-end lounges. You hurt me, she said softly, hating how her eyes stung. I hope therapy helps you, but this, us, is something I'm not ready to fix. Not when I'm pregnant and dealing with the fallout of your affair. He nodded slowly, eyes downcast. I understand. Can we at least finalize a parenting plan together, so we avoid a court battle? Adelaide's chest tightened. The idea of legal battles over custody, lawyers firing arguments back and forth, felt draining beyond measure. She knew, however, that if Maxwell tried to manipulate the agreement, she'd fight. I'm open to discussing an arrangement, she said, under the guidance of our attorneys. And if you truly want to be involved, show me, not just with words. He didn't argue. For once, he seemed to accept her stance without grandiose promises. As they parted ways, both left with a sense that a fragile new chapter had begun. Where is everyone reading from right now? Let us know, your location or even your cozy reading spot. We love hearing from our global community. Back at Estella's, Adelaide sank onto the sofa, mind buzzing with the conversation she'd just had. She glanced around the small living area, noticing piles of old magazines and the faint aroma of lemon cleaning solution. It was a humble sanctuary compared to the penthouse, but it had become her safe haven nonetheless. Estella peeked in from the bedroom, concern in her eyes. How'd it go? She asked gently. Adelaide recounted the exchange, from Maxwell's admission of therapy to his request for a co-parenting plan. Estella listened intently, handing Adelaide a glass of cool water. When Adelaide finished, her friend let out a thoughtful sigh. It sounds like he's trying, Estella noted, but it's also too soon to tell if he's serious or just desperate. A surge of conflicting emotions welled up in Adelaide. That's exactly it. I can't read him anymore. Maybe I never could. Part of me misses the man I thought he was. Another part wants to scream every time I see him. Estella squeezed Adelaide's arm in solidarity. That's normal. Healing isn't a straight line, especially when you're pregnant and your hormones are all over the place. Grateful, Adelaide nodded, then picked up an envelope from the coffee table. It contained the updated divorce documents Penelope had just sent. Sitting next to it was a brochure Estella had picked up from a local childbirth education class. I have to manage both these things at once, Adelaide murmured. End my marriage and prepare to become a mother. It feels surreal. Estella glanced from the envelope to the brochure. You'll get through it. You're stronger than you think. And you're not alone. Adelaide's eyes drifted to the window, where dusky twilight settled over the city skyline. She wondered how she'd ever piece her life back together, how to coexist with Maxwell for the baby's sake while protecting her own heart. If there was any silver lining, it was the unwavering support of friends like Estella, her capable attorney, and perhaps, in time, her own mother's comfort, though she still dreaded that conversation. Feeling the baby flutter, she rested a hand on her belly, whispering a silent promise. She would protect this little life with everything she had. Feeling Adelaide's struggle? Let us know with a heart emoji or comment. Stay strong, Mama. We appreciate every bit of support you show. When Adelaide finally reached out to her mother, Veronica Reeves, the conversation was both cathartic and excruciating. Veronica lived in a quiet coastal town, far removed from Manhattan's frenetic energy. Over a video call, Adelaide braced herself for the wave of maternal concern that came through her phone screen. My darling girl, I wish you'd told me sooner, Veronica said, her warm eyes brimming with tears. You shouldn't have to bear this alone. You know you can always come home. Adelaide's throat tightened. For a second, she pictured returning to her childhood house, its cozy fireplace, the well-worn rocking chair she once read in for hours. I might do that, she confessed, voice breaking, at least for a short while after the baby is born, to clear my head. Veronica nodded, but the question in her gaze was clear. Is Maxwell truly irredeemable? She didn't ask it outright, but Adelaide saw it lurking. Veronica had adored him. She'd believed her son-in-law was a brilliant, loving man who would make Adelaide happy forever. Swallowing, Adelaide answered the unspoken query. He cheated, Mom. Lied to me over and over. It's not just the betrayal, but the disregard. I can't trust him anymore. Veronica's lips pressed into a thin line. Then you do what you must for yourself and the baby. I'm here to support you, and I'm sure you'll make the best decision for everyone involved. As the call ended, Adelaide felt a pang of sadness, but also gratitude. She had expected her mother to launch into pleas for reconciliation or try to minimize Maxwell's wrongdoing. Instead, Veronica was simply her pillar of love, willing to listen without judgment. Exhaling a breath, Adelaide turned off the phone and momentarily imagined the gentle hum of waves in her hometown. Maybe a temporary escape would do her good. Manhattan was thick with reminders of Maxwell, but it was also the place where she'd built her career and formed close friendships. The idea of uprooting felt both appealing and terrifying. Which do you think Adelaide should choose? Stay in Manhattan or retreat to her hometown for a while? Share your take, comment, stay for independence, or go for peace. We'd love to see what you think. As the divorce proceedings ground forward, Adelaide's routine became a balancing act of prenatal care, legal meetings, and emotional upheaval. Some days she could barely muster the energy to rise from the small guest bed in Estella's apartment. Other days, she threw herself into preparing for the baby's arrival, reading books about infant care, drafting birth plans, and practicing mindfulness meditation to calm her rattled nerves. Meanwhile, Maxwell made intermittent attempts to keep her informed about his personal changes. He would text updates about his therapy sessions or forward screenshots of canceled business dinners, presumably to prove he wasn't repeating past patterns. Adelaide read them all, but rarely replied. In her view, sincerity took more than a few messages and a handful of canceled parties. One afternoon, she attended a childbirth education class at a local community center. Surrounded by couples holding hands and sharing excited glances, she felt a distinct loneliness. Although she took notes diligently and even managed to laugh at the instructor's jokes, she couldn't ignore the void by her side. This was supposed to be a joyous, shared journey. Instead, she was forging ahead alone. After class, she recognized a familiar face in the hallway. Fiona Caldwell, an old acquaintance from charity events. Fiona was wearing a maternity dress and a luminous smile, her husband at her elbow. They greeted Adelaide warmly, but their concerned glances said it all. They'd seen the headlines. Gossip about the Cavendish scandal had spread quickly. "I'm so sorry about what's happened," Fiona whispered, empathy radiating from her features. "If you ever need a friend to talk to, please call." Adelaide forced a polite smile, heart twisting at the contrast between her predicament and Fiona's evidently happy marriage. "Thank you," she replied softly, accepting a small slip of paper with Fiona's number on it. As she left the center, she felt both touched and haunted. The bright side was discovering kindness in unexpected places. The dark side was being reminded, yet again, that she faced motherhood under the cloud of Maxwell's betrayal. Ever felt lonely in a room full of people? Share your experience or send a virtual hug to Adelaide. Every bit of solidarity can help her keep going. Adelaide's lawyer, Penelope Ralston, requested another sit-down meeting with Maxwell and his attorney in hopes of reaching a settlement that avoided a messy trial. The rendezvous took place in a sleek conference room, all glass walls and modern furnishings. On one side of the long table sat Adelaide, accompanied by Penelope's steady presence. On the other side, Maxwell appeared unusually subdued, while Frederick Chambers sifted through paperwork with the precision of a hawk. Penelope opened by outlining Adelaide's terms, generous but firm. She wanted an appropriate monthly child support amount, reflective of Maxwell's substantial income, plus coverage for any prenatal and postnatal medical expenses. Adelaide would keep her personal property, and they would work out a custody schedule once the baby was born. She would also have exclusive occupancy of the penthouse for at least a year, long enough to decide if she wanted to stay in the city or transition to her hometown. Frederick acknowledged Maxwell's acceptance of most items, but raised an eyebrow at the penthouse clause. "Mr. Cavendish believes cohabitation might be extremely uncomfortable, given the circumstances," he said, addressing Penelope. "Could we consider an alternative residence for Mrs. Cavendish that Maxwell funds?" Adelaide stiffened. The idea of Maxwell controlling where she lived, even financially, made her uneasy. "I don't want him dictating my surroundings," she said, voice steady. "The penthouse is partly mine, especially after all the years I supported his ambitions." Maxwell lifted his gaze, looking genuinely remorseful. "I'm not trying to push you out, Adelaide, but if it makes you uncomfortable to remain there, I'm willing to help you find a place that suits you better." She considered his words, remembering the tension she felt among those cold marble floors. "I want the option," she reiterated firmly. "I'll decide if or when to leave." A hush settled over the room, broken only by the shuffle of documents. Slowly, Frederick nodded. "We can incorporate that flexibility, if Maxwell agrees." Maxwell closed his eyes as though the weight of regret pressed down on him. "I agree," he finally said. The session ended on a note of guarded optimism, but Adelaide knew the real test would be whether Maxwell honored these agreements without turning it into a public tug-of-war. Is a compromise the right move, or should Adelaide hold her ground more firmly? Drop us a line. Comment, Team Compromise or No Mercy. We're curious to see how you'd negotiate. Estella greeted Adelaide that evening with her usual kindness. They ate simple takeout on the worn couch, sharing updates about the day. Halfway through a container of dumplings, Adelaide's phone buzzed again. Another text from Maxwell. This time it wasn't about the divorce. It read, "Bianca apologized. I ended things for good. Therapy is helping me see how badly I messed up." The name Bianca struck Adelaide like a jolt. Though she'd never met the mistress, the tabloids had mentioned her enough. An up-and-coming socialite who'd reportedly caught Maxwell's eye at a real estate gala. Feeling her chest tighten, Adelaide set the phone aside. She didn't respond. She'd never asked Maxwell to keep her informed about the other woman, yet here he was, volunteering the information as if it would make things better. Estella noticed Adelaide's tension, Something about her? She asked gently, using a careful pronoun that avoided giving the mistress's name power. Apparently Maxwell ended things, Adelaide said dully. He's going to therapy, wants me to know he's changed, or changing or something. But what am I supposed to do with that? Estella pursed her lips. He may genuinely be trying, but it doesn't erase the hurt. It might help you if he's sincere, though, especially when the baby arrives. A stable co-parent is better than a destructive one. Adelaide's gaze drifted to the thick manila folder of custody proposals and financial statements. I'm trying to keep the baby's future at the forefront. I know that no matter what, I'll be okay on my own. But I don't want my child to grow up without knowing their father, assuming he really is capable of being one. Her voice trembled slightly and Estella placed a warm hand on her shoulder. Only time can test his sincerity. For now, do what you must to protect your emotional health and the child's. If Maxwell's therapy is genuine, his actions will prove it. Words are cheap. Adelaide nodded, glancing at her phone once more. She felt numb, the swirl of too many emotions settling into a cold, guarded state. Pressing a hand to her belly, she closed her eyes and whispered a silent reassurance to her unborn child. You are loved no matter how complicated this world might become. If you believe in love tempered by caution, comment, patience is power below. Let's keep uplifting each other's spirits as we follow Adelaide's journey. As the weeks passed, Adelaide's body changed rapidly. Her belly grew rounder, and each slight flutter or kick reminded her of the miracle unfolding within. Emotions ran high, sometimes dipping into sadness over what could have been, other times surging into fierce resolve for what would be. Penelope informed her that the final court date for the divorce decree was drawing near, which both relieved and frightened her. It meant the end of a significant chapter and the start of an entirely new one. One bright Sunday morning, Estella convinced Adelaide to join her for a peaceful walk in Central Park. The crisp air and golden hues of falling leaves offered a brief escape from the legal chaos. They found a bench overlooking the lake, where rowboats drifted lazily under the sun. What do you envision for your life after the divorce is official? Estella asked, curiosity lacing her words. Adelaide exhaled softly. I want to find an apartment, maybe in a quieter neighborhood, something with enough room for a nursery and a sense of home, and a job that fulfills me, maybe returning to my roots in nonprofit work. I lost track of that in Maxwell's world of galas and high-stakes deals. Estella smiled. That sounds grounding. And Maxwell's role? The question lingered as a flock of ducks glided by on the water's surface. Adelaide frowned in contemplation. I want him involved, if he truly commits. It's not about punishing him. It's about making sure our child has the best environment possible. He's the father, but I won't rely on him. I've been burned too badly. They remained there, letting the crisp breeze and autumn colors soothe their spirits. Adelaide felt the baby shift, drawing her focus inward once more. She realized how many times she'd read about single mothers bravely forging ahead and found new empathy for them. Still, a thread of sadness wove through her relief. Sadness for the marriage that had held so much promise, for the illusions she had once called love. Just then, a gentle drizzle began, prompting them to head home. As they ducked under a thick canopy of trees, Adelaide noticed her phone lighting up with an unknown caller. Was it Maxwell trying a new number? Or perhaps news about her upcoming legal proceedings? She steeled herself, anticipating the next battle in a war she never asked to fight. If you've ever craved peace in times of chaos, share your story or drop a tranquil emoji. We'd love to know how you found calm in life's storms. The call turned out to be from a midwife at the maternity center, confirming Adelaide's next prenatal class. A small detail, yet it filled her with renewed purpose. She was about to become a mother, and that reality overshadowed the drama swirling around her marriage. Later that evening, she stared at her reflection in Estella's hallway mirror, noticing how pregnancy had softened her features, even as heartbreak had tested her spirit. Penelope texted to confirm the final court hearing date. It was set for the following Wednesday, a mere 3 days away. The knowledge sent a jolt through Adelaide. She pressed a hand over her belly, remembering the moment she first saw the positive pregnancy test in a plush bathroom that seemed like a fairy tale. Now, with the dissolution of her marriage imminent, she felt an odd mix of sorrow and liberation. On the morning of the hearing, Estella offered to accompany her for moral support, and Adelaide gratefully accepted. They entered the courthouse, its high ceilings and echoing corridors imposing, yet strangely impersonal. Maxwell was already there, standing with Frederick near the courtroom doors. He managed a polite nod when he caught sight of Adelaide, and she returned it without smile or scowl. As they stepped inside, the formalities began. The judge reviewing documents, attorneys outlining the terms of the settlement. All the while, Adelaide's heart fluttered, not from romance, but from the gravity of finality. She listened as Penelope succinctly recounted Maxwell's infidelity, the emotional harm inflicted, and Adelaide's need for secure alimony and child support. Maxwell, through Frederick, did not contest the charges. He merely voiced a wish to remain part of the child's life. The judge, a stern woman with an air of compassionate authority, paused before rendering her decision. Her gaze traveled between Adelaide and Maxwell, perhaps measuring the sorrow in their eyes. "This divorce decree is granted," she pronounced clearly. She finalized the settlement, custody agreements pending the baby's birth, and recognized Adelaide's right to the penthouse, should she choose to reside there. A gavel tapped, echoing in the silent space. In that moment, Adelaide felt the final shred of her marriage slip away. If you were in that courtroom, would you feel sadness or relief? Comment bittersweet end if you sense both. A light rain fell as Adelaide exited the courthouse. She paused on the steps, staring at the dark sky overhead. For so long she had imagined the term happily ever after in the context of her marriage to Maxwell, an unstoppable power couple in Manhattan. Now she was free, but the sense of loss cut deeper than any physical wound. Estella stepped beside her, wordlessly offering an umbrella, and Adelaide gave a shaky sigh of thanks. Behind them, Maxwell lingered at the bottom of the steps. For a moment, Adelaide caught his eye. 1,000 unspoken words passed between them. Apologies, regrets, unfulfilled dreams. A gentle nod was all she offered before turning away, determined not to dissolve into tears on the courthouse steps. She had already shed enough tears in private. Over the next few days, she found solace in routine. She arranged a time to gather her belongings from the penthouse, carefully boxing up remnants of a life that once sparkled with promise. Maxwell was absent, perhaps out of courtesy, or perhaps because it pained him too much to watch her pack. Either way, she swept through the rooms methodically, setting aside items for donation and leaving behind anything that bore too many memories. It was during this process she noticed a note in the master bedroom, a folded piece of paper on the windowsill. In Maxwell's handwriting it read, "I hope you find true happiness for yourself and our baby. I'm sorry I lost our future. If there's ever a way to mend something, I'm here." A tear slipped down her cheek, but she reminded herself that some breaks, no matter how sorrowful, cannot be wholly mended. Back at Estella's, she placed the note in a small keepsake box, unsure if she'd ever revisit it. Then, summoning her fortitude, she made a call to a real estate agent. She wanted to explore neighborhoods in Brooklyn, possibly near the promenade with its tranquil view of the Manhattan skyline. A fresh start beckoned, one that she would define on her own terms. And so Adelaide Cavendish, newly divorced and soon-to-be mother, stepped bravely into the unknown. She wasn't sure if Maxwell's remorse would flower into lasting change, but she knew one incontrovertible truth. No betrayal would ever again shatter her sense of self-worth. Thank you for reading Adelaide's emotional journey. If you've been moved by her story, comment resilience and tell us your takeaway. Your engagement fuels more stories like this. Stay tuned for more tales of heartbreak, hope, and human courage, and remember your voice matters here.
Pregnant wife found a bracelet in his car. What the millionaire said next made her question everything. A swirl of emotions coursed through Isabella Martin the moment she saw that glimmering, unfamiliar bracelet tucked beneath the passenger seat of her husband's Bentley. She was on her way to the doctor's office for a checkup, carrying the promise of new life in her belly, when her entire reality shifted in an instant. As the wife of Andrew Martin, a self-made millionaire known for his lofty business deals and impeccable reputation, she was accustomed to lavish surprises, but never like this. The delicate jewelry piece felt like a dagger to her heart, raising questions no pregnant woman should have to ask. especially about the man she thought she knew best. Isabella Martin had been married to Andrew for nearly 4 years. Their relationship started like a fairy tale, with Andrew's success story gracing local newspapers and even once mentioned in Forbes' top 30 under 30 to watch. He had soared to millionaire status before he turned 30, thanks to a brilliant software development venture that revolutionized real estate analytics. Isabella was drawn to his warmth and grounded attitude despite his soaring ambitions. Everyone said the two of them belonged together. At 8 months pregnant, Isabella often felt short of breath. On this particular morning, Andrew had taken a ride sharing service downtown for a meeting, leaving his Bentley in the driveway so Isabella could drive herself to her prenatal appointment. However, as she got settled in the driver's seat, something slid under her foot. She leaned down to retrieve it, expecting maybe a pen or a coin. Her heart sank to find a slender silver bracelet, the kind she'd never seen before. It wasn't her style. She had never owned a piece with such intricate swirling designs etched around the band. Her immediate reaction was confusion. Andrew was known to spoil her with gifts, Tiffany necklaces, Cartier earrings, each carefully chosen for her taste. This was different, old-fashioned, almost antique, and definitely not intended for her. A cold flush prickled at her skin. She felt unsettled and yet refused to jump to conclusions. Rationally, it could be a client's misplaced jewelry. Maybe someone from Andrew's office had borrowed the car. But her heart hammered with an urgency that had nothing to do with reason. The bracelet radiated a sense of betrayal she couldn't shake. Images flooded her mind: Andrew laughing with a mysterious woman, whispering over dinner at an exclusive club, or sharing a private moment while traveling. She recalled an awkward phone call last week when Andrew ended it abruptly the moment she walked into the room. At the time, she brushed it off as business confidentiality. Now, she wasn't so sure. Pregnant, hormonal, and thoroughly shaken, she looked at her round belly in the rearview mirror and fought off tears. Her baby needed her to be strong, but anxiety churned within. The drive to the doctor's office turned into a trial of mental endurance as she wrestled with every suspicion taking shape inside her. At the prenatal clinic, Isabella hardly registered the usual hustle of expectant mothers flipping through magazines or tapping on their phones. She managed a polite smile at the receptionist, who recognized her from previous visits. But inside, she was consumed by one question: whose bracelet was it? By the time her obstetrician, Dr. Fiona Caldwell, ushered her in, Isabella was trembling. Dr. Caldwell was a composed woman of 50, with sharp eyes yet a kind voice. After the routine weight check and belly measurement, the doctor noticed Isabella's unusual tension. "Is everything all right at home?" Dr. Caldwell asked gently. Isabella hesitated. Could she confide in the doctor about her fears? She chose to hold back, not wanting to muddy the waters with speculation. "Just the normal nerves," she lied, forcing a wry smile. "Everything's fine." "You can always talk to me if you need anything," Dr. Caldwell said, scribbling notes on Isabella's file. Isabella nodded, tears dangerously close. The checkup concluded normally, and Isabella drove home feeling more uncertain than ever. She stared at the bracelet beside her in the passenger seat, swallowing her mounting panic. 1,000 scenarios played out in her mind. She tried to quell her suspicions with logic. Andrew might have given someone a lift, maybe an employee like his assistant Michelle. But Andrew rarely let anyone but her inside this particular car, protective of its pristine interior. And he had never allowed employees or acquaintances to treat it as a taxi. When Andrew finally returned that evening, Isabella was waiting in the living room, half coiled in fear, half burning with adrenaline. The sumptuous interior of their modern villa in Los Angeles, with its open-plan design and floor-to-ceiling windows, felt cold and lifeless. The sun was just dipping below the skyline, casting elongated shadows across the polished marble floor. Andrew entered with a familiar energy, his tie loosened, jacket slung over one arm. Usually, Isabella would rise to greet him with a kiss. Now she remained seated, the bracelet resting on the coffee table. "Hey, darling," he said, stepping forward. He stopped short when he saw the expression on her face. "Is something wrong?" Isabella picked up the bracelet and held it out. She watched as Andrew's face registered confusion. Then his eyes flared in recognition, or was it panic? "Where'd you get that?" he asked. "I found it in your Bentley this morning." Silence. Andrew's eyebrows knit together. "In my Bentley?" He sat on the couch across from her, leaving a gulf between them. "Yes," Isabella said, her voice trembling. "I don't own this. Do you want to explain?" Andrew exhaled slowly, leaning his forearms on his knees. "Bella, it's not what you think." He glanced at her stomach, and his features softened. "Look, I can see you're upset. But you have to believe me, this has nothing to do with another woman. Who does it belong to then?" I'm not sure," Andrew admitted. "Could it be Michelle's? Or, hold on." He took the bracelet, turning it over in his hand as though looking for an inscription. "I need to think. I might have given a ride to my cousin Sophia last week after a fundraiser. She was wearing some kind of antique bracelet. I remember seeing it and complimenting her on it. She'd inherited it from our grandmother. This might be hers." Isabella eyed him warily. Andrew had a large, extended family, scattered across various social circles. Sofia Delgado was one of his closest relatives, a cousin he grew up with, who'd recently moved to Los Angeles. Isabella didn't know her intimately, but had met her enough times to recognize she and Andrew shared a strong bond, almost like siblings. "And you didn't realize it was under the seat?" Isabella pressed. Andrew shook his head. "I've been busy. I rarely drive that car myself. You know how my schedule's been. It's possible it dropped off her wrist, and neither of us noticed." Relief warred with lingering doubt in Isabella's mind. The explanation seemed plausible, especially if it was a piece of old family jewelry. Still, something in Andrew's voice felt guarded, like there was more he wasn't saying. Yet, she had no concrete reason to doubt him if he was referencing Sophia. After a long moment, Andrew reached for her hands. "Bella, you have to trust me. I wouldn't do anything to jeopardize what we have. You and this baby mean everything to me." She let him pull her into an embrace, inhaling his familiar cologne. She wanted desperately to believe him. Her heart ached to trust that the father of her child wouldn't betray her. Isabella retreated to the bedroom to rest, her doctor's words about managing stress echoing in her mind. She stretched out on the plush bed, recalling the early days of their romance. They had first met at a charity gala hosted by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Seattle. Andrew's philanthropic streak had led him to invest heavily in educational programs across underprivileged neighborhoods. Isabella, freshly out of grad school and a volunteer at the event, had been starstruck by the swirl of powerful attendees. Warren Buffett had made a brief appearance. So did other notable figures. But it was Andrew's kindness, not his status, that drew her in. She remembered their first real conversation. He was guiding a group of donors through a new coding scholarship program. Isabella was handling check-in for the event. Their eyes locked, and Andrew ended up ignoring the rest of his group to chat with her for nearly an hour. He was direct, unabashedly curious about her background in social work and her dreams of establishing community centers. At the end of that night, he asked if he could call her. She'd accepted without hesitation. Their love was a whirlwind. Expensive dates at Michelin-starred restaurants contrasted with volunteering weekends at local shelters. Andrew adored the world of finance, technology, and strategic investments, but he also cherished quiet walks on the beach. Soon they were traveling abroad, forging partnerships in Europe, visiting famous museums, and supporting charitable causes. No one was surprised when he proposed after just a year of dating. Their wedding was small but elegant, only family and close friends under the summer sun in Lake Tahoe. Yet the press latched on to their union, painting Andrew as a rare breed of humble tech millionaire and Isabella as the radiant philanthropic partner. Isabella's insecurities about being overshadowed by Andrew's success never fully vanished, though he always tried to reassure her that she was his equal partner, not a trophy. Now, lying in bed, that memory of their shared vows threatened to become stained. She wanted to believe in Andrew's innocence, but her instincts, especially pregnant instincts, kept pricking at her mind. Why would Sophia say nothing if she lost such a precious heirloom? Over the next week, Isabella tried to push the bracelet incident aside. Andrew insisted he had texted Sophia about the missing jewelry, but according to him, she was traveling to Mexico for a real estate development conference and hadn't responded. He told Isabella that once Sophia returned, she would confirm it was hers, and they'd be done with the matter. Yet Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She noticed Andrew working even later than usual. Sometimes he stepped outside to take phone calls, speaking too low for her to overhear. If she approached him, he'd quickly wrap up and pretend nothing had happened. On 2 occasions, she woke in the middle of the night to find him pacing in the living room, phone in hand, a troubled expression on his face. One Sunday afternoon, she confided in her best friend, Natalie Parker. Natalie was a sharp attorney who practiced family law in Los Angeles. She knew the darkest sides of relationships, having represented several high-profile divorces. When Isabella told her about the bracelet and Andrew's explanation, Natalie's reaction was concerned yet careful. "It could be nothing," Natalie said, sipping a latte at the patio of a chic cafe in Santa Monica. "But you know I always say, trust your gut. If Andrew is hiding something, you have every right to ask questions. Have you tried calling Sophia yourself?" Isabella shook her head. "I don't want to seem paranoid. What if Andrew's telling the truth?" "But what if he's not?" Natalie pressed. "Listen, I'm not telling you to prepare for divorce court, but you're about to have a child. You need stability, truth, and trust. Don't stay silent if you feel uneasy." That evening, Isabella waited for Andrew to come home from a business dinner. She'd made a simple supper. Her appetite had been erratic, but she wanted to keep up appearances of normalcy. Andrew looked exhausted, rolling up his sleeves as he entered the kitchen. "Bella, I have some big announcements coming up with the company," he began, rummaging for water in the fridge. "We're on the verge of a huge merger with a real estate analytics firm in Europe. It's all hush-hush for now, but the legal documents are monstrous. That's why I've been so distracted." Isabella mustered a polite nod, placing a plate of pasta on the counter for him. "Have you heard from Sophia yet?" Andrew hesitated, then shook his head. "Still nothing. But you know how it is with her. She goes off the grid for days, a knot formed in Isabella's stomach. She knew Sophia to be adventurous, but never irresponsible. She reached for her phone and found Sophia's number. Andrew immediately froze. "Bella, really, she might still be out of the country." "Don't stress yourself." Ignoring him, Isabella pressed the call button. After a few rings, the line clicked, and a recorded voice announced the call could not be completed as dialed. Possibly no service in whatever part of Mexico Sophia was in. That answered nothing. "See," Andrew said, gently removing the phone from her hand. "We'll ask her when she's back." Isabella nodded, but her lingering anxiety only deepened. Days turned into another week, and still no word from Sophia. Even the family's group chat, where Sophia occasionally posted photos of exotic destinations, remained silent. Isabella debated her next move. On one hand, confronting Andrew constantly might erode their relationship further, especially if he was truly innocent. On the other, she couldn't sit idly by, stewing in uncertainty. After wrestling with her conscience, she decided to hire a private investigator. It wasn't an easy choice. In fact, she felt almost guilty for betraying Andrew's trust in this manner. But the stakes were high. She was bringing a child into the world. If there were secrets, she needed to know before it was too late. She met Harvey Wilkins, a discreet and recommended detective, in a quiet cafe near Brentwood. A spry man in his 50s, Harvey had a fatherly aura that made Isabella feel safe. "I'm not accusing my husband of anything specific," she explained, hands wrapped around a cup of herbal tea. "I just need to know if there's something going on, another woman, or something else." "He's changed." She didn't elaborate on the bracelet, just gave Harvey enough details for him to start quietly observing Andrew's movements. Harvey listened attentively. "I understand. I'll be discreet. Let's start small, monitoring his public comings and goings, seeing who he meets. If there's anything suspicious, we'll dig deeper." Isabella agreed, simultaneously relieved and nauseous about crossing this line. She had never pictured herself in a scenario like this, especially not while she was pregnant with the man she loved. While Harvey began his surveillance, Isabella tried to keep life normal. She and Andrew attended a high society fundraiser in Beverly Hills. It was a lavish event at the Four Seasons Hotel, featuring champagne fountains and an orchestral quartet. The glitz and glamour felt suffocating to Isabella, who was more concerned about her swollen ankles and the possibility of running into more hidden secrets. Midway through the evening, a middle-aged woman with carefully styled hair approached Isabella. "Hello, dear. You must be Isabella. I'm Gloria Weller, Richard Weller's wife. I've heard so many wonderful things about you." Isabella forced a polite smile. She recognized the name. Richard Weller was a major investor in one of Andrew's companies. "It's lovely to meet you," she said, scanning the crowd. Andrew was several feet away, talking animatedly with another group of business moguls. Gloria lowered her voice, conspiratorially. "I don't mean to pry, but is everything all right with you and Andrew? I only ask because I saw him having a pretty intense conversation with a young woman at the Ritz-Carlton lounge 2 nights ago. He seemed, well, let's just say they looked quite engrossed in each other." Isabella's chest constricted. "You sure it was Andrew?" Gloria shrugged apologetically. "I'm not blind, dear. I've known Andrew for some time. Perhaps it was business, but they seemed very familiar. He left rather abruptly when he noticed me." A swirl of emotion shot through Isabella. She tried to appear calm. "Thank you for letting me know. I'm sure it was work-related. Andrew's got a lot on his plate." Gloria gave an understanding nod. "I hope so. You're both such a lovely couple." Then she drifted away to mingle. Isabella's knees felt weak. She excused herself to the restroom, where she splashed water on her face. If Andrew was having secret meetings with a mysterious young woman, how did that tie in with the bracelet? Was it truly Sophia's, or had he lied? She stared in the mirror, searching her reflection for a sense of clarity. All she found was a pregnant woman drowning in doubt. The following morning, Isabella received a text from Harvey. "We need to meet. Found something. Please call." Heart pounding, she dialed immediately. Harvey's voice was measured, not wanting to startle her. They arranged to meet at his office, an unassuming suite above a quiet row of shops in Culver City. Harvey led her into a dimly lit room, lined with filing cabinets. He motioned for her to sit. "I've been tracking Andrew's daily routine. He's mostly at work, in meetings, or traveling to high-end restaurants, likely for business lunches and dinners. Nothing out of the ordinary for a high-profile CEO. But 2 nights ago, he did go to the Ritz-Carlton downtown, as someone apparently reported to you. He met with a woman in the lounge. I managed to retrieve some security footage." Harvey slid his laptop across the desk. The footage showed Andrew at a table with an elegant brunette. They leaned close, their heads nearly touching. Andrew looked tense. At one point, the woman reached across, placing her hand over his. The video had no audio, but the gestures spoke volumes. Andrew never tried to remove her hand. Instead, he looked resigned, or maybe conflicted. Isabella's eyes burned. "Who is she?" Harvey cleared his throat. "I did some digging. Her name is Evelyn Carter, a journalist who used to work for the Los Angeles Times. She's now a freelance investigative writer. She's known to dig up stories on wealthy individuals, especially if there's scandal involved." Isabella's heart hammered. "Scandal? My husband hates negative press. Why would he meet her?" Harvey shrugged. "Could be blackmail, or maybe she's threatening to publish something. It's not uncommon for journalists to push for hush money if they've discovered skeletons in a millionaire's closet." He paused, letting the gravity settle in. "But it could also be personal. I'm not sure yet. They were spotted again last night in a private booth at the same lounge. He might be trying to negotiate with her off the record." Tears gathered in Isabella's eyes. "Is there any indication that they're intimate?" "I have no proof of that," Harvey said. "All I know is that they're meeting in secret. It's definitely clandestine." Isabella's mind spun. Had Andrew fathered a child with Evelyn in the past? Was he paying her off to keep quiet? Was the antique bracelet actually Evelyn's? The possibilities swirled like a storm. She thanked Harvey, telling him to continue investigating. Her baby kicked as she walked back to the car, reminding her that time was running short. She had to uncover the truth before the stress of all this threatened her health or that of her child. That evening, Isabella confronted Andrew again, her voice trembling with hurt. "I know about Evelyn Carter." Andrew's face turned white. "What do you mean?" "I know you've been meeting her at the Ritz-Carlton." "Why all the secrecy, Andrew? Who is she to you?" He ran a hand over his face, exhaling sharply. "So you hired someone to follow me?" She didn't deny it, ignoring the guilt that threatened to surface. "You left me no choice. I'm pregnant, and I'm terrified. Talk to me." Andrew sank into the nearest chair, his expression a blend of sorrow and frustration. "Evelyn approached me a few weeks ago. She claimed to have damaging information about my father's business dealings years ago, things that could implicate me too. She threatened to go public if I didn't give her an exclusive interview or maybe some hush money. I've been trying to handle it quietly." "What kind of information?" Isabella asked, barely able to steady her breathing. Andrew hesitated. "My father was involved in some shady real estate acquisitions decades ago. My seed money for my company partially came from him. If Evelyn makes it look like my business was built on dirty money, it could ruin everything: my reputation, our finances, future deals. I've been meeting with her to see if I can convince her there's no story, or, if necessary, to buy her silence." Tears welled up in Isabella's eyes. "Why couldn't you just tell me? Did you think I wouldn't understand, or that I'd judge you?" He looked at her, eyes filled with shame. "I didn't want to burden you, especially when you're pregnant. I thought I could fix this on my own. As for the bracelet, I truly believed it belonged to Sophia. But now I'm not so sure. Maybe Evelyn left it in the car when she cornered me after a meeting. She followed me to the parking garage once. I don't know. Everything's been a blur." Isabella stood in stunned silence. Part of her felt relief that Andrew's secrecy might not be tied to a romantic affair. Yet the betrayal of trust stung just as deeply. "You should have let me in," she whispered. "I'm your wife." Andrew reached for her hand, eyes brimming with regret. "I know, and I'm sorry. I swear there's nothing between me and Evelyn in that way. She's persistent, manipulative, and I've made the mistake of dealing with her alone." Just when Isabella thought the situation couldn't grow more complicated, Sofia Delgado reappeared. One afternoon, the doorbell rang, and there she stood, elegant as ever, wearing designer sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat. Her cheeks glowed with a sun-kissed tan. "Bella, it's been too long," Sophia exclaimed, air-kissing Isabella's cheeks. "I've been overseas and completely off the grid. How are you? My goodness, you're about to pop any moment now." Isabella smiled tersely, ushering her inside. "We've been trying to reach you. Andrew thought you lost your bracelet in his Bentley." "Is it yours?" Sophia scrunched her brow. "Bracelet? I only wore one in Mexico, my turquoise bangle. Definitely not an antique silver piece." She shrugged. "Sorry, that wasn't me." Isabella's heart sank. So Andrew's initial story was wrong. Whether it was a genuine misunderstanding or a cover-up, it meant the bracelet truly belonged to someone else. Perhaps Evelyn. Sophia seemed unaware of the tension. She prattled on about her travels, the developments she was scouting for her next real estate project. Isabella's mind was elsewhere, spinning the new revelation into the mosaic of questions that plagued her. Later that night, Isabella confronted Andrew with Sophia's words. He closed his eyes, massaging his temples. "Then Evelyn must have left it. She confronted me in the car park a few weeks ago, the only time she was near my Bentley. She must have dropped it without me realizing." Isabella swallowed her relief and heartbreak in equal measure. Yes, it meant Andrew wasn't cheating with some unknown woman, but it confirmed he'd known Evelyn was near his car. "You lied," Isabella said quietly, tears pressing at the corners of her eyes. "You said it was probably Sophia's." "The truth is you suspected Evelyn, didn't you?" Andrew hung his head. "I didn't want to drag you into this. I hoped I could fix everything before you found out. I was scared you'd never look at me the same if you knew my father's money might have been tainted. I wasn't sure how far Evelyn would go. I panicked. I made a terrible call." The next morning, Isabella woke up with an ache in her lower back and a swirl of dread in her heart. The baby was due in a matter of weeks, and stress was taking its toll. She decided to confront Evelyn head-on. If Andrew wouldn't solve this quickly, Isabella had to protect her family herself. It wasn't hard to find Evelyn's contact information. She had a professional website listing her freelance journalist services. Isabella, using her maiden name to remain anonymous, sent an email requesting a meeting to discuss a potential investigative piece. Within hours, Evelyn replied, suggesting a coffee shop near West Hollywood. Isabella arrived early, scanning the cafe's patrons. Evelyn entered shortly after, wearing a sleek blouse and skirt, her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She was striking, with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Miss Gonzalez?" Evelyn asked, referencing Isabella's fabricated name. "Yes," Isabella responded, gesturing to the seat across from her. As soon as Evelyn sat, Isabella removed her sunglasses. "I'm actually Isabella Martin, Andrew's wife." Evelyn's eyes flared in surprise, but she quickly recovered. "Well, this is unexpected. What do you want?" Isabella held up the bracelet, letting it dangle between her fingers. "Is this yours?" Evelyn studied it with mild amusement. "Ah, so that's where it went." "Yes, it's a family heirloom. I wondered where it slipped off." "Thank you for returning it." She extended a hand, but Isabella pulled the bracelet back. "No, not until you stop this madness. My husband told me what you're doing, threatening to publish dirt on his father." "Why?" Evelyn folded her arms, leaning back in the chair. "Because Andrew's father, Lloyd Martin, ruined my family. You might have heard the name Carter in passing, or maybe you haven't. My grandfather lost everything when Lloyd engaged in a predatory deal, flipping land in Sacramento. We ended up in poverty. My father was an alcoholic who died young, driven by despair. I vowed I'd get justice someday." Isabella's throat tightened. She had never known the specifics of Andrew's father's business ventures, only that he was a controversial figure who passed away years ago. "You're blaming Andrew for something his father did decades ago?" Evelyn's jaw set. "He benefited from those dirty deals. My father tried to dispute it in court, but the Martins' money and power silenced him. Now Andrew's a golden boy. Everyone loves him. Well, I'm going to expose the real truth about where his money originated. Isabella's heart pounded. But Andrew was a child then. He had no say in his father's actions. That may be so, Evelyn conceded, but he inherited the spoils. The public should know. Unless he's willing to compensate the Carter family for what we lost. Blackmail, Isabella hissed. Evelyn shrugged, unrepentant. Call it restitution. He can throw money at philanthropic causes, but can't right the wrong done to my family. Hypocritical, don't you think? Isabella's eyes burned with tears. You're destroying an innocent man's life. If you want restitution, file a legal claim. Don't do this under the table. Legal claims cost money, time, and a mountain of proof, Evelyn replied coolly. Andrew prefers hush-hush deals, or so I thought, but he's waffling. I'll give him 1 more week to decide. Then I publish. She rose, a predatory confidence radiating from her. Enjoy the bracelet, or toss it in the ocean. It's worthless to me now. With that, Evelyn glided out of the cafe, leaving Isabella trembling. She pressed a hand to her belly, silently apologizing to her unborn child for all this turmoil. Isabella drove home, mind racing. Andrew was pacing in the foyer when she walked in. The moment he saw her pale face, he rushed forward. What happened? Did you actually meet Evelyn? Yes, Isabella said quietly, and recounted every word. Andrew looked shaken. He'd known Evelyn was after money, but hearing the full story of her father's downfall was sobering. All this time, I thought she was just trying to exploit my father's past. I didn't realize there was a personal history of tragedy. Andrew's voice was thick with guilt. I can't pretend it doesn't matter. But blackmail, we can't encourage that. They spent a sleepless night discussing options. Andrew's lawyers argued that paying Evelyn off would only embolden her to demand more in the future. They advised a preemptive legal strategy, challenging Evelyn's claims. But Andrew worried a public lawsuit would create a media circus, harming his upcoming merger and possibly tarnishing his philanthropic image. Meanwhile, Isabella tried to find a moral stance. Was it so wrong to pay Evelyn a settlement if it truly did restore what her family lost? The blackmail angle was ugly, but maybe it could bring closure to Evelyn. Yet the principle of enabling extortion felt wrong. As the days dragged on, Isabella's blood pressure began to rise. Dr. Caldwell lectured her about reducing stress. She was dangerously close to hypertension, which could harm the baby. Natalie Parker, her best friend, expressed concern too, urging Isabella to put her health first. Andrew tried to lighten the load. He withdrew from a few business engagements, cancelled some events. They spent more quiet evenings at home, preparing the nursery. The fleeting moments of peace came when they assembled the crib, folded tiny baby clothes, and chose lullabies. But the shadow of Evelyn Carter's threat loomed over them. One late evening, Andrew discovered Isabella in the nursery, tears streaming down her face as she held a small pair of socks. "I'm so scared," she whispered. "Our baby deserves a calm, loving environment. But we're sitting on a powder keg." He knelt beside her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "I'll handle it. I swear. No matter what it takes, I'll make sure you and our child are safe and happy. We'll come out of this storm stronger." Isabella wanted to believe him, but the fear that something irreparable might shatter their family lingered in her thoughts. The final showdown arrived when Evelyn Carter sent a formal email to Andrew's office, doxing Andrew's chief legal advisor. It was laced with righteous indignation, listing references to old legal documents, receipts, and property records from Lloyd Martin's dealings. Evelyn threatened to publish a full expose on a major online platform if Andrew did not agree to a settlement of $2 million within 48 hours. Andrew's lawyers were furious. We need to file an immediate restraining order, defamation suit, everything, they insisted. Andrew hesitated, torn between legal aggression and the potential to settle quietly. The 48-hour clock was ticking. Meanwhile, Isabella hovered in a state of near panic, certain the stress would trigger premature labor. In desperation, she called a family friend, Judge Rosalind Hayes, a retired circuit court judge who had known Andrew's mother for years. Judge Hayes listened patiently as Isabella poured out the entire story. "You have two major concerns here," the judge said kindly. "One is legal, the other is moral. Legally, if she's blackmailing you with information that may or may not be accurate, you have grounds for legal recourse. But morally, if her family truly suffered, some restitution might be the right thing to do. However, it must be done properly. You don't want to set a precedent for hush money. This can be mediated officially." Andrew agreed to a mediation process, albeit with immense reluctance. Evelyn accepted, likely sensing that an official settlement might be her best bet. The next morning, both parties convened at a lawyer's office in downtown La. Isabella sat by Andrew's side, feeling every muscle tense as Evelyn walked in with her own attorney. The mediator, a calm woman named Margaret Reynolds, opened the session. "Today we aim to settle claims regarding alleged losses suffered by the Carter family due to the actions of Lloyd Martin in real estate acquisitions. We also address Miss Carter's threat to expose alleged wrongdoing by Andrew Martin." Evelyn laid out her evidence, describing how Lloyd Martin had manipulated local officials to push through a property deal that eventually forced multiple families into foreclosure. She had documents showing how those profits funded Andrew's earliest business investments. Andrew didn't deny that money from his father helped him in the beginning, though he had since expanded far beyond that initial infusion of capital. The mediator eventually guided both parties to consider a fair settlement, factoring in interest and the intangible damages to the Carter family. Andrew, resisting any suggestion he was morally culpable, still recognized the Carters' plight. Ultimately, a settlement was proposed, a structured payment that would aid any Carter descendants in regaining financial stability. It wasn't an admission of wrongdoing on Andrew's part, but a gesture of goodwill to rectify past harm. Evelyn's attorney conferred with her. Isabella watched, heart pounding. Finally, Evelyn gave a curt nod. She would drop the expos, return the bracelet, and sign a binding agreement not to publish any claims unless new evidence of intentional wrongdoing surfaced. The tension in the room was palpable. Isabella could hardly breathe. She felt relief, but also sadness that such a tragedy had festered so long. For Evelyn, it was closure. For Andrew, it was a reckoning with his father's legacy. When the agreement was signed, Evelyn paused at the door. She looked at Isabella, who was quietly sitting with a hand on her pregnant belly. "You're lucky your husband wants to do the right thing," Evelyn said softly. "I still think the world deserves to know." "But this is better than nothing." Isabella nodded, tears brimming. "I'm sorry for your loss, truly. I hope this helps you find peace." In the days following the tense mediation, a fragile sense of calm settled over Isabella and Andrew's household. Though the agreement with Evelyn Carter had been signed and sealed, effectively ensuring her silence, both spouses felt as though they were still tiptoeing on eggshells, half expecting another crisis to erupt at any moment. Yet, as each sunrise came and went without incident, the relief gradually grew stronger. A confidentiality clause safeguarded the settlement, keeping rumors of hush money at bay. Only their attorneys and Judge Rosalind Hayes knew the precise details of the agreement. Andrew's corporate team proceeded with caution, finalizing legal paperwork that would pave the way for his planned merger with a European real estate analytics firm. Meanwhile, Isabella observed everything quietly, sitting in on more meetings than usual just to be near him. She no longer wanted to be shut out of any part of his world. Despite lingering tension, life at home began to slip into a gentler rhythm. Isabella's belly, now just a few weeks shy of her due date, was the constant focus of Andrew's attention. He insisted on taking her to each prenatal appointment himself, determined to prove that nothing was more important than his family. Although the turbulence with Evelyn had bruised their trust, these small daily acts of devotion began to mend the invisible rifts. Sophia, blissfully unaware of the worst of the ordeal, swung by the house one afternoon. She brought homemade soup and a pile of comedic DVDs, declaring that laughter was the best medicine for an anxious mum-to-be. Over an early dinner, Sophia did notice Andrew's subdued manner and Isabella's lingering wariness. Although she asked gentle questions, neither offered more than vague hints about recent stress, promising to fill her in when the time was right. Sophia, gracious as ever, shifted the conversation to baby names and nursery decor. Watching her cousin's bright smile, Andrew felt a pang of gratitude that the settlement remained a secret. He didn't want anyone else in the family carrying this burden. Isabella's best friend, Natalie Parker, also became a staple visitor. Having served as their confidant and informal legal guide, she was now the friend who ensured Isabella was resting enough. Some nights, she dropped by with takeout and thick law books, half joking that the baby was going to be born, reciting contract clauses. Natalie's dry humor helped Isabella decompress, and her mere presence served as a reminder that not every legal battle needed to be fought alone. Meanwhile, Evelyn Carter faded into the background. According to Andrew's private investigator, Harvey Wilkins, she had diverted her attention to a new investigative piece outside of Los Angeles. The hush money rumor never broke in the press. For the Carter family, the settlement funds meant tangible hope, an end to old debts, and a stepping stone toward a more stable future. Though deeply scarred by Lloyd Martin's past dealings, Evelyn appeared to accept that her quest for justice had reached its most realistic conclusion. At home, Andrew threw himself into final preparations for the baby. Each evening, he and Isabella spent an hour reorganizing the nursery, color-coding onesies, testing the rocker's lullaby feature, and triple-checking every detail of the crib's assembly. They laughed over how a single, tiny person could require so much equipment and how, in spite of their wealth, the simplest items like a well-stitched blanket or a sturdy rocking chair brought the most peace of mind. In those hushed twilight hours, when Andrew and Isabella would pause in the half-lit nursery, they often felt the weight of recent events pressing at the edges of their thoughts. Yet the sight of the baby's empty crib kindled a shared determination. They had to keep moving forward together. The cost of betrayal and secrets had been far too steep already. Still, they made room for genuine hope. While Andrew's philanthropic image remained unsullied in the public eye, it was the private lessons he and Isabella took to heart, that money could not buy trust, and that real love meant staying vulnerable, even when fears loomed. With each passing day, they learned anew that crises like the storm they had just weathered could galvanize a marriage if both partners worked to keep honesty alive. In one of their quieter moments, Isabella reflected on all that had transpired. There had been nights of heartache, unspoken suspicions, raw confrontations, and ultimately a moral crossroads where they chose empathy and transparency. Yet, as she rested her hand on her swollen abdomen, feeling the gentle kicks from within, she sensed that this harrowing chapter might actually be preparing them for parenthood, teaching them that protecting something precious often demands more than personal pride. It demands sacrifice, understanding, and unwavering unity. She and Andrew sat on the nursery floor one evening, back against the wall, fingers loosely intertwined. "We've come such a long way," she murmured, her voice thick with emotions she could barely articulate. Andrew responded with a soft, grateful smile. In that moment, Isabella grasped that the greatest test of love wasn't how elegantly two people handled success, but how steadfastly they held on to each other when confronted by their darkest truths. And so, a new dawn of possibility broke upon their household. The fear had not vanished entirely, but with each strengthening heartbeat of the child. Within her, Isabella felt they were forging a deeper bond than ever before, one tempered by fire, yet radiant in its resolve to move forward. At 2 in the morning, only a few days after the settlement documents were signed, Isabella bolted upright in bed. A sharp, radiating pain rippled through her abdomen. For a moment, she was unsure if she had dreamed it, but then another wave surged, confirming her greatest suspicion the baby was coming early. Her breath caught as she fumbled to switch on the bedside lamp. The warmth of Andrew's body beside her offered little reassurance when she saw how much the contraction forced her to double over. "Andrew!" she hissed through clenched teeth, shaking his shoulder. "Wake up, I think it's time." He stirred, momentarily disoriented, until he registered the panic etched into her face. Launching out of bed, he scrambled to pull on the nearest clothes. Heart pounding, he tucked his phone into his pocket and snatched up the car keys. Isabella, legs trembling, tried to pace her breathing, just as the birthing class had taught her. He guided her gently down the staircase, insisting she lean on him with every step. Outside, the night was unusually still and cold for Los Angeles. The hush felt both eerie and surreal. The city lights shimmered, but Isabella had no time to admire them. A fresh contraction made her grip Andrew's arm so tightly he almost dropped the keys. His frantic yet tender demeanor reminded her of the early days of their relationship, how protective he'd been from the start. Despite everything they'd gone through in this life-altering moment, there was no one she'd trust more. They sped down deserted streets to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Andrew tossing occasional glances at his wife, offering words of encouragement even as his own voice shook. By the time they reached the maternity ward, Isabella was drenched in sweat. Nurses in pastel scrubs hurried over with a wheelchair, whisking her away to a private delivery room. Amid the bright overhead lights and the hum of monitors, Isabella fought to control each contraction, focusing on her breathing the way Dr. Caldwell had instructed. Andrew clung to her hand, stroking her damp hair away from her face. His eyes glistened with tears, part fear, part awe at the realization that they were about to meet their child. The intensity of the moment made all their recent trials fade into the background. Labor proved more grueling than Isabella had imagined. Every few minutes, she felt a searing rush that nearly took her voice away. Andrew dabbed her forehead with a cool cloth, murmuring soft words of reassurance. They locked gazes, unspoken gratitude passing between them for having confronted their deepest secrets. No matter the hurdles, they had to hold it together for the life that was about to begin. Hours stretched on, blurred by pain and anticipation. With each wave of contractions, Isabella found new strength in Andrew's presence. He pressed a steadying hand against her lower back, wincing whenever she let out a sharp cry. Flashing images of the bracelet and Evelyn Carter flickered through her mind like distant memories, reminders of just how much stress they had endured. Now, all that seemed insignificant compared to the raw immediacy of bringing a child into the world. At last, Isabella felt an overwhelming pressure, followed by a surge of relief as Dr. Caldwell urged her to push one final time. Andrew's voice cracked when he said, "You can do this. We're almost there." With a rush of effort, Isabella gave a guttural cry, then collapsed against the pillows as the sound of a robust newborn wail sliced through the air. Their daughter had arrived, pink-faced and furious, tears of life glistening on her tiny cheeks. Isabella couldn't stop sobbing from the flood of emotion. Andrew, overwhelmed, cut the umbilical cord under the gentle guidance of the medical team. The nurses quickly cleaned and swaddled the baby before handing the precious bundle to Isabella. She cradled her daughter, skin still flushed from exertion, but heart filled with wonder. In that moment, the magnitude of love rendered every other problem inconsequential. They named her Lily Grace Martin, a legacy that honored Andrew's late mother, Lily, and Isabella's grandmother, Grace. The name felt like a promise of hope, a testament to the resilience and love that had carried them through. As dawn broke through the hospital windows, painting the sterile white walls with soft pink light, Andrew and Isabella huddled close, marveling at the tiny fingers curled around Isabella's own. While Lily slept in the bassinet nearby, Andrew crossed the room to stare out at the glimmering city lights, now fading into a new morning. He could hardly believe how their lives had been nearly upended by betrayal, secrets, and the weight of a family legacy he hadn't fully understood. When Isabella joined him, resting her head against his shoulder, he whispered, "We came so close to losing everything, including each other." Tears welled in Isabella's eyes, but she smiled softly. "We survived it because we didn't let those secrets tear us apart. We're a family now." They fell quiet, each remembering the ordeal with Evelyn, the settlement that threatened to upend Andrew's reputation, the lies they had told themselves and each other. Returning that bracelet had become a symbol of letting go of dark pasts. Now, gazing at Lily Grace, they silently vowed she would never bear the burden of old sins. They would always choose honesty, even when it hurt. Andrew brushed a gentle kiss against Isabella's temple. "I swear, no more lies, no more hidden business or protecting you by shutting you out. Whatever life throws our way, we face it together." In that hushed hospital room, as the first rays of the sun lit up the horizon, Andrew and Isabella leaned on each other, their hearts brimming with hope. They had endured betrayal, heartbreak, and the spectre of scandal. But now, with Lily dozing peacefully, everything else seemed to fade into insignificance. Their family was whole, woven with new threads of trust, and a love that promised to shine brighter than any darkness from the past. In the weeks that followed, the hush money rumor never surfaced. The settlement remained confidential, known only to lawyers and the signatories. Andrew's business merger went through smoothly, with some minor bumps from the legal drama behind the scenes. Yet public perception of Andrew remained unsullied, his philanthropic image intact. Sophia, oblivious to most of the turmoil, doted on baby Lily whenever she visited. She joked that Lily would grow up to inherit a legacy much freer from controversy than Andrew did. Meanwhile, Natalie visited often, playing honorary aunt and dropping off legal disclaimers about how to protect Lily's future. Evelyn Carter moved on to a new investigative piece. The Carter family finally had some restitution money that could help them rebuild. While not entirely satisfied, Evelyn seemed to have found enough closure to step back from her crusade. Through it all, Isabella and Andrew discovered that crises could strengthen a marriage, provided both partners let honesty prevail. In a quieter moment, Isabella looked back at the last several months, the lonely nights of suspicion, the confrontation over the mysterious bracelet, the shocking revelation of Andrew's father's dark dealings, the final compromise for justice, and Lily's miraculous birth. She realized that the greatest test of love wasn't just how you handle triumphs, but how you navigate the shadows. And though they might face more trials ahead, Andrew and Isabella had forged a bond of steel, sealed by their precious daughter's arrival into the world. Thank you for journeying through the twists and turns of Isabella and Andrew Martin's story. From the moment that mysterious bracelet surfaced to the final confrontation with Evelyn Carter, we witnessed how secrets can fracture even the strongest bonds. Yet in the end, love persevered and a new life baby, Lily Grace, became a beacon of hope. Their struggle reminds us that trust is fragile but can be rebuilt when truth and forgiveness stand at the forefront. If this real-life drama fiction captured your heart, please remember to hit the like button to show your support. Share it with friends who crave a gripping tale, and subscribe to this channel for more stories that venture into life's most harrowing dilemmas and triumphant victories. Stay tuned, keep believing in the power of honesty and love, and we'll see you next time.